Outstanding work of our change agents and Dr. Johnny Cruz Craig. We worked on different topics, not just the normal thing. You know, we worked on culturally relevant teaching, social and emotional learning, trauma-informed classrooms, and the whole child, just to name a few.
In terms of what you all are doing and what it means to us and what it means to everyone, education is a foundational key. I think it was George Washington Carver that said education is the key to freedom, which is the tie and the link between education and social action.
Delta pushed early on that it's not just matriculating through a scripted curriculum that may not teach needed life and adaptive skills. We have been pushing through our gyms and other programs that you need to focus on educating the whole person so that our next generation has the basic life skills to navigate and adapt in now an even more demanding and unrelenting world environment.
Good afternoon. My name is Jody Jones Lucas, and I am a member of the Tennessee Tag Team, which is made up of equity warriors committed to empowering all stakeholders in education to use their power to make informed decisions when advocating for our students. So whether you've been doing this work for a short amount of time or you have years of experience in this work, we have something here to share with you for tonight. For example, our organization in 2018, I had the chance to work with the Memphis Interfaith Coalition for Action and Hope. And during their Issues Convention, this was an event that was designed to allow their members to advocate or to bring solutions to a number of issues and that were impacting our community. And one of those issues that I chose to champion was education. And so I had the chance to, for 2 minutes, speak to the crowd and persuade them to use education as one of the 3 issues that they would use for the organization that year. And they won. But you don't get this type of passion and able to do these things without knowledge. And that knowledge came from my work with Teachers Advocating to Lead Great Change. We were focusing on the Every Student Succeeds Act. And so I knew that there were things happening in policy right then and there that these people in this community that could do something that we could see results with by the end of the school year. So that's where that experience came from, which led to further work with the organization. As they grew, they developed a youth council, and I had the chance to share with them just basic components of the Every Student Succeeds Act. This is something that was impacting them, that while they were in school, they were in the school system that was created, the educational landscape that they were navigating was created by the Every Student Succeeds Act. And so it was interesting to engage with these children and watch them learn the skills that they need to pick issues that they were compassionate about. And as a result, they're now working and doing great work in the community. And maybe you are not into policy and you just want to serve. So with this organization, we were able to engage churches in the community who had experience with giving. And we were able to give away backpacks at an event that spread more awareness about the Every Student Succeeds Act and called on them to strengthen their school, family, and church ties. So again, I'm Jody Jones Lucas, and I'm one member of the Tennessee Tag Team. And right now I'm going to tag you, Amisa. You're it.
Thank you, Jody. Again, my name is Amisa Green, and I'm a teacher here in Robertson County. I live in Nashville. And just as Jody said, one of the initiatives that our team is focusing on and looking at is improving reading proficiency and understanding with students. For we feel that a lot of reading skills and reading knowledge has been lost with the interruption of school, with COVID, with students going from virtual to in-person, back to virtual, and so on and so forth. So we're working with the Book Nook program, where we will have tutors that can work with students, a focus group of students, virtually, to assist them with improving their reading skills and reading knowledge. And hopefully, once they've gone through this program, that they will inch towards proficiency and grade level reading. So thank you once again for joining us on this afternoon. Our topic for today is nightmares in education and a guide towards student pathways. And we have 3 phenomenal and exceptional educators that will share with us their knowledge in turning a nightmare into a dream for students, for parents, as well as for community leaders. For, as I said, with all of the changes that have gone on in education through this year, through COVID-19, through testing flops and testing disparities, internet disparities, technology disparities, we're looking at different ways that we can improve that and increase student growth from beginning of school to the end of school. And we're also going to look at various pathways that we can challenge and carry students through career and career opportunities. So we have 3 distinct panelists that will share this knowledge with us. And we look forward to you engaging with them. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, if you would place them in the chat, and when we come to our question and answer section, we will share those out and we will allow our panelists to answer those questions. So our first panelist that we will bring to the screen and introduce to you is Mrs. Candace Jennings. And Mrs. Jennings, it has a master in child and family studies and is certified to teach grades pre-K through 4th. She has worked in the public school system in Nashville, Tennessee since 2003. She was a classroom teacher and an excellent classroom pre-K teacher for 10 years, with the majority of her time, as I said, in pre-K and 2 years in a public Montessori school. She also spent 1 year as an assistant center manager for Head Start before returning to the public school system as a pre-K instructional coach. Currently, she serves as a district pre-K ambassador for classroom environment and instruction. So please welcome to the screen, Mrs. Candace Jennings. And on a personal note, Candace and I grew up together. She lived next door to me. I played in her yard. She played in my yard. We played with each other's pets, and we also played school from time to time. So just wanted to welcome Candace Jennings and thank her for being a panelist on our webinar. Our next panelist that we will bring to the screen is Dr. Sharshenda Covington. And Dr. Covington is currently serving as a turnaround principal in the third largest district in Georgia. She has 15 years of educational experience, and it's provided her with an opportunity to gain experience in supporting the executive and instructional leadership teams in schools across the nation. She has created and developed mentoring and effective implementation of state standards, evaluated the quality of teaching and learning, and created assessments at the school and district levels. She has also served as a school improvement consultant and literacy trainer with the Southern Regional Educational Board in Atlanta, Georgia, in which she primarily served the bottom 5% of schools in 14 states. Dr. Covington is also a first generation college graduate of Spelman College, and with a bachelor's degree in political science, a master's of education degree in curriculum and instruction from Central Michigan, and a doctoral degree from Capella University. She is also a proud member of Eastern Star and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And for the last 6 years, she has been an active participant in the Delta Teacher Efficacy Program. So we want to welcome Dr. Sharshenda Covington and thank her for agreeing to speak on our panel on today. Our final panelist is Mrs. Dawn Stone. And Mrs. Stone is the owner of Conflict Chick, a consulting company that provides training and development for organizations and corporations, teams, and individuals that specializes in conflict management, communication, storytelling, and diversity and inclusion. Dawn's 27 years of corporate experience, coupled with her MBA in marketing and management and conflict management, has afforded her the opportunity to touch thousands of lives across the U.S. through education and leadership training, which she provides. She is currently pursuing a doctorate in education from Peabody College at Vanderbilt in leadership and learning in organization, where she plans to enhance the organizations and leaders she serves through curriculum, research, and development. Dawn's passion to develop and train others resulted in several entrepreneurial ventures since the age of 19. And this diversified skill set was leveraged in every leadership role that she has served in. For the last 11 years, she has served as an adjunct professor at the college and community college level in business, entrepreneurship, communications, and general education. Dawn is a graduate of Middle Tennessee State University, the University of Tennessee at Knoxville and Lipscomb. And she is also a proud member of the Iota Tau chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So ladies, thank you all so very, very much for agreeing to join us in on our panel and for speaking to our viewers today on the nightmares of education and how we can turn that around from a nightmare into a dream for not only students, but families and parents. We will go ahead and begin our discussion. And if you would, ladies, if you will tell us now, we have talked about your background and things that you have done throughout your career. If you would tell us now some things that you are doing currently, just for our viewers to know and to get a better view of you. And we will start with Dr. Sharshenda Covington. If you'll tell us briefly what you're doing now currently, then we'll go with Ms. Jennings and Ms. Stones, and in that order.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I am Sharshenda Covington, the proud principal of an elementary school here in the Metro Atlanta area. I am a proud member of the DTech Tag Team for Georgia. So I've been doing that work since 2014 under the leadership of Dr. Johnny Cruz Craig. I'm also the owner of Academic Literacy Services, and it's a three-pronged approach. We provide professional development in an array of different areas, coupled with adult learning support. So dissertation consulting for adult learners, whether it's an associate's or a doctorate degree, we provide support for adult learners. And then lastly, curriculum and assessment development. And I just recently became a best-selling author, so shameless plug, Foundational Reading Skills. And it's basically a way to bridge the gap between, or bridge the homeschool connection with literacy. Of course, we know that it's the core of all things for learning. And that's me in a nutshell. I'm also a proud mommy. That should have been first.
Yes, to Sid the Kid, and we have so many funny stories about Miss Sid the Kid. And congratulations again on your upcoming book. That's out
Thank
now. We'll
you.
definitely have to get that and share that. I have to get that and share that with my principal once we get back into school. Mrs. Jennings, if you will go ahead and tell us some things that you're working on currently.
Yes, I'm Candace Jennings, and I've been in education for 18 years, and my expertise is with our youngest learners. I'm currently an instructional coach with the Metro Nashville Public Schools in the early learning department. I typically assess classroom settings and interactions with teachers and children and teachers, but right now I am helping our department to support our teachers with virtual and hybrid teaching, which hybrid teaching is when a teacher is responsible for in-class students as well as virtual students. And our department is giving lots of support to those teachers at this time. I'm also a proud mom of 2 boys.
Yes. Yes, and they are. I just love watching them play basketball. They've tried to show me a couple of pointers, Candace, but you know how that goes. They also have fun playing with my dog. Our final panelist, Ms. Dawn Stone, if you will share some things that you're working on currently.
Oh, thank you for having me. A couple of things that I'm working on. Basically, I'm currently working as an adjunct professor, as stated earlier, at Austin Peay State University. And earlier this year, I had the opportunity of working at Lipscomb University as well. And with the COVID transition, there's been a lot of changes. So I'm real excited to see some of those changes and challenged by others. So a lot of the work that I do now, inside and outside of my classrooms, is helping adult learners find their authentic selves and connect to their passion. So I too have written, I'm not a best-selling author yet, but I do have 2 books out there. And what I do is I help the students at whatever level they come to me, as well as their parents, really do their work. And so a little bit about me, I have 1 in college, 1 in high school, and a toddler still in pull-ups. So there's never a dull moment in our house. In fact, if they burst in, just forgive me, but that's par for the course in virtual learning.
That's very true. And just like with Candace, Dawn is a church member of mine, and I also grew up with her as well, looking up to her as a teen, wanting to be just like her, i.e. why I'm in Delta as well. But that's another story for another day. Ladies, again, thank you for agreeing to be on this panel. The questions that were submitted to you, we will go in a different little order. I will start off with one where all of you can answer, and then I'll mix them up for those of you that were given specific ones based on your area. So we'll go ahead and get started. And again, thank you for joining us and for agreeing to be on our panel. Our first question, COVID-19. COVID-19 has caused many disruptions throughout education, socially, throughout churches, everywhere. You name it, it has interrupted life as we've known it. With COVID-19 has turned education into a true nightmare. What areas of this nightmare have you seen in your students and families? And what steps have you taken to guide both parties through this? We will start with Mrs. Jennings. We'll go with Dr. Covington after that, and then Ms. Stone.
Yes, so this has been a difficult time for everyone involved in that it's new and challenging. Parents must work and often have to leave their children with a caregiver. Children sometimes miss online learning schedules due to scheduling in the families. But what I've noticed is that our youngest learners have been really resilient. They can adapt to most any setting with the proper guidance and supports in place. We've seen many students make gains socially. They start to wave at friends and in the on the webcams. They're asking for friends. Where are they? Things that we didn't think were going to happen. We thought that the social aspect of it would just completely disappear, but it didn't. It actually, children are wanting and still needing that social interaction, and they are getting it somewhat through the internet. We also have they look forward to responding to their teachers in different platforms, such as Flipgrid. We use that in Metro for our pre-K students, and the teacher will leave a video, teachers instruct them, and then they'll respond, and the children are enthusiastically responding. They are so happy to see their teacher, and they know who she is. But parents are in a position where it's hard, and we're all struggling with that. And those are just some of the things that we're working on here to help it be easier for parents and children to transition once they are able to go back into the building.
Okay. Dr. Covington?
Thank you so much. I have to agree with Candace. It definitely highlights the resilience that has resulted. We have to identify different ways to bridge the home school connection. What we're clear about is there were deficiencies before COVID-19. And so what we have to be reminded about is identifying different ways to level the playing field. And so we have to think a little more creative. We have to see how we can support the parents that are now responsible primarily for their children's cognitive development. But I think it goes back to education being a civil right. How do you level the playing field? It's bigger than accessibility. It's bigger than internet connectivity. It's the nuts and bolts of cognitive development, essentially, and how we can bridge the gap with parents. How do we make parents comfortable enough to say what they need? Candace mentioned the daycare providers. How do we even know that they care? Because at the end of the day, the children just show up and that's a guaranteed check. So there are a lot of things. So it requires us to be critical thinkers on how we can essentially bridge gaps of things we can no longer control. Because when they were in our buildings, we had a little more control. But that's not the case now. So I think it reminds me of accessibility, equity. Again, students were deficient before they went home for COVID, right? So how do you bridge that gap and still meet the expectations of your current school year? And then one of the things we did was just offer sessions for parents. Of course, there's more time because there's not a clear delineation between home and school anymore, because school is at home now. Mm-hmm. So just keeping that at the core. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Covington. And like I said, and as you and Candace both said, we've been back in person since August, so I have seen some of those deficiencies. And as we said, COVID brought out a lot more areas that we had been speaking of and talking about for years, but now it seems like it's brought it to the forefront. And everyone, we're hoping, is getting a clear vision of that in order to make some improvements there. So our final panelist that will speak on the effects of COVID, it will be Dawn Stone.
Okay, thank you. So I'm at the other end of the spectrum, and I am the professor who has every level of our students from freshmen to seniors, and it's impacting them in a lot of different ways. So what I'm seeing is the deficiencies at the first year level, the deficiencies with the transition from high school to college. So I'm having to reteach and also relearn this particular group's needs. So we see a lot of mental health. I have a lot of mental health and depression issues. So I immediately started my semesters with teaching Zoom. So I actually set up classes to go one-on-one and in a group setting to do just the technology, because I know with this transition, COVID allowed us to have a couple of videos, yes, but as you know, students and parents all learn in different modalities. So there are people who saw a video and was like, yeah, I don't know what to do. And they would show up in my physical classroom. So our great institution decided early on, actually not really early, about 2 weeks before school started, to have us teach our Zoom classes in the physical classroom, because I literally encountered students on a daily basis just wandering through the halls trying to figure out where to go, what to do, and to have some community. So support is the second space where I'm seeing a true deficit. Support at home, support in the classroom, and support of their peers. Because now that we've pushed them to the virtual model or even hybrid models in some cases, there's still not that level of care and concern for a number of them. So it's very much like Dr. Covington said, if they will let us know what they need, we can help. But for so long, and I'm in week, we're in the third month. So we've gone through midterms. My students this term had 4 to 6 midterms in the same week. So in my classroom, I said, how many of y'all have more than 2 midterms? All the hands went up, virtually and in person. And so what I did is I pushed my midterm out for 2 weeks. So it's having the ability to pivot on a dime in the classroom and make sure that we are meeting the needs of our students. And what I'm also identifying is that gap that comes from K through 12 over into the college setting. I have a number of first-year students, and I was a first-year graduate of my family. My mother attended school, but it took her many years to get her degree. I was the first to go in. And so I have these students wandering through life, and I'm seeing the educational and the attainment gaps, whether it's English, math, that come right into my college classroom. So we no longer have the ability to kind of assess that in real time. And so I'm literally hosting hundreds of calls, literally, and dealing with my students where they are. And so I think that's
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Dawn. And thank you for allowing us to see how that looks on the opposite end, from them entering school, going through school, and then coming out as a graduate of high school and entering the college setting. Our next question, will be for Dr. Sharchinda Covington. As you have worked with teachers, community advocates, and other administrators, what can contribute to a school functioning unsuccessfully and becoming a nightmare for the community? And this is a two-part question, but that's the first part of that question.
Okay. One of the things I have to keep at the core, I'm very direct with a smile, of course. But for me, all children can learn. I live by that. But I've also added, as I went through my educational career, not only can all students learn, but all teachers can teach when equipped with the necessary tools. So for me, an unsuccessful school means we haven't figured out the problem. It's not that they can't be fixed. It's not that my students can't win. They absolutely can. And I'm a firm believer. I'm the biggest cheerleader in my building. And I say that to say it doesn't matter how we got here, but it will help us to not stay here. And so when I introduce myself, when I'm sitting in those meetings with the highest performing school in the district, I'm still the proud principal of Stone Mountain Elementary School, because it is critical for my students to know that there's a believability in them. And that's not to say that the principals before me weren't able to do it, but what I would like to highlight is you have to have the right people on the team. And so my first year, 89% of my staff had been there 3 to 21 years. My second year, I had a 70% new staff. My third year, I had a 94% retention rate. So for me, that's not to say that those individuals that were there when I first got there were not great, but maybe your time is up here. And so one of the things I had to keep at the core of each conversation, I said, let's just say you were dismissed today. You can go apply for another job. But my third grader that's retained in the third grade because they couldn't pass the standardized assessment, they're at a disadvantage. So they're not being impacted the same way as you. And so what I'm also clear about is this a work in progress. After that first year, we had great gains and our score didn't move. That was crushing, but guess what? As the instructional leader, I still have to model the expectation. So yes, let's celebrate here. Let's figure out why we're here though. So those 5 rounds of why are critical to everything I do. I'm gonna always ask why. It's not because they all got number 3 wrong. The question is, why did they get number 3 wrong? And then after you figure out that answer, there are 4 more rounds of why, because we need to get to the root cause. And that requires strategic data analysis. So it's not just looking at the proficiency rate, it's looking at the skills that are evident in the proficiency rate. And then shared decision-making. That was heavy for me because I'm an only child, so I'm used to working in isolation. I'm used to leading charter schools where sometimes it's just you. I served in a capacity where I was not only the principal, I was a school improvement consultant, I was a testing coordinator and a counselor. So I'm used to working alone. So one of the challenges for me was building my capacity to share the work. And so once I got that, we're rocking and rolling. We're leading in some capacities in our district, the collaborative planning process. But that's the team. Mm-hmm. I tell them all the time, you guys made me look absolutely amazing.
Awesome. And I think you answered the second part of that question. And the second part of that was how were you able to turn a school from a nightmare to a dream? And that, just as you said, just putting it back on the people that's there. If they want to be there to improve, then they will take the steps necessary and the training necessary to do that. But if not, as you said, your time may be up, your season here may be up, and it's nothing wrong with that. We all go through that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Our next question is for Mrs. Candace Jennings. Can you explain the importance for students to have an effective start as they enter school in the early grades? And yours is also a two-parter. And what are some areas or factors that can help or hurt a program in preparing students for entering school?
Yes. So we know that the earliest years are when children are learning the fastest. Their neurons are firing at the highest rate that they're going to fire throughout their life. And research has proven that over and over again. What's important for programs to know is that the foundation of learning starts, like Ms. Chandra said, with the culture of the building. So when we start our culture, the positive or negative environment that children have to be exposed to every day affects them. So we have to know what that is, address it, and create an environment where children can learn. So that's the very first thing that programs need to look at, is their culture. The second thing is looking at environments. And so in the classroom, there are environments set up for children specifically for them to thrive and do their best. And if children are in a messy environment, they can't necessarily thrive and be their best. Environment is the next cue that tells children what they need to do. They need to know where their independence lies, when they need to ask for help. Those are parts of the program that need to be set up by the teacher. That environment is your other teacher. If you have one teacher in the classroom, it's your second teacher. If you have two teachers, it's your third. You're going to want visuals and things to help children know what their role is in this classroom. The third thing is intentionality. And teaching intentionality with intentionality, starting with social emotional skills. So children need the social emotional skills as a foundation for academic learning. Without those social skills, they can't sit still long enough to hear what you're trying to help them learn. They can't play a game if they can't get along with their classmates. Any learning game that you set up, they're going to have to know how to interact first. So they first need that intentional social emotional learning situations. Teachers will need to role play, set up different games, teach them how to share, go into their play. The next thing is the intentionality with the materials in the classroom. Teachers need to be able to know what their materials are for and how to use them and how to teach children how to use them. So when you're in a classroom environment, children can't learn from the toys if they don't know what to do with them. So it's nice to have pretty classrooms, but it's not nice to not be able to learn from those materials. So children need interactions with others. They need to be able to play with materials appropriately and be able to know what's expected of them. And those are the things that show what a good program is. And I want to emphasize that they can't truly learn, and it can't take place until that social emotional piece is in place.
Excellent. And with as we said, with COVID going on now, that is a definite factor and a strength that needs to be retaught repeatedly throughout. Our next question is for Don Stone. As a college professor, what factors tend to limit students from entering college or the workforce successfully? And can you explain what is needed and how you assist students in reaching success as they move into life after graduation from high school?
Oh, very good question. Very loaded question too. I want to echo what our other panelists have talked about, and a concept that I teach even at the early childhood level is called how to build safe kids. Although that's the support, the advocacy, the fit, and the education. So the great thing about higher education is a lot don't even know what they want to do. And I, as an adult now, I still reinvent myself. So, the first conversation is, who are you? What support do you need? How can I advocate for you? What is your fit in life? What is the shoe that you want to wear? Is it a heel? Is it a platform? Is it a Air Force One? Whatever that may be. And how do I get to the education that's necessary to get me to my desired end state? So because I've worked in community colleges, as well as private institutions that cost oodles and oodles to get into, I treat every student with what they need, regardless of where they are. So I know in the statistics, some of the factors that we have is that Safe Kids, a lot of our children go through a lot of stuff. So by the time they get to my classroom, it's like, what are the things that you really need? Some of them need study skills. So I teach them and go back and reiterate some of the things that you've taught them in K through 12. You know, we look at a multiple choice question and we say, what is the test taking skill that we will use? What strategy are we going to use to solve this type of question? I encourage them to start looking at their careers from the first day they get there. And as a serial entrepreneur, those students sometimes in college like to say, well, I kind of wanted to do, you know, something else. And I said, well, let's go do it. And we develop an individualized plan for them. So the one thing I like to do is just say, hey, I've got this track. You're here for this reason. You have these interests. How can we make these two meet in the middle? And so that's really what I provide for our students. And then also I look at what's going on at home. I have students who have been on house arrest. I have students who have been incarcerated. I have students who have been sexually abused, emotionally abused, traumatized just through life. And we have those real discussions outside of the classroom because, again, their success, just like you, the other ones here, their success is in my hands. And like I tell them, once you're on my team and we're one, I will go to bat for you forever. So I'd like to share one success story when we do this extremely well at the higher education level. I had a young man that was in my classroom at Nashville State Community College back in 2008. He Facebooked me this time last year and said, guess what? I said, what? He said, I got my master's degree from the University of Alabama and I want to thank you. And so to hear that type of commitment, that type of support, you know, being that safe kid, we were able to provide that. Myself and our team of professors, as well as their family, getting that support helps them make it to the next level. So when we're looking at the gaps at the higher education level, wherever there is a need, fill it. So my students who don't have a good home support, I get them into the therapist. I bring the therapist into my classrooms. Those that don't know how to go and research a paper, I embed a librarian in my classroom because if they did not get that in K through 12, they're going to need to know that, especially if they want to pursue and be a Dr. Covington, right? Because that was never shared to me. I had no idea that I could have been a doctor, not of medicine, but of education or whatever, right out of undergrad. So it's really about helping them define their own paths and acknowledge their own truths and help them fill those gaps, even if it's not at home, giving them support that they need. So those are the things that I'm seeing at my level and what I really encourage our students to do. Have that conversation, find some advocates. And if they don't, I teach them to do it.
Awesome. I do have one. Well, just for time's sake, we only have a couple of more questions that we'll get to before we move into our next phase. But this one is for everyone. And speaking of nightmares and speaking of changing that face of education from a nightmare to a dream, how how can funding or the lack of funding affect student success? And how will data assist in the increase or decrease of funding? So we will let Dr. Covington start there, then we will go with Ms. Stone and Ms. Jennings in that order.
Why me? So I'm gonna try to keep it together. So my second dissertation was on federal funding and student achievement. And so what my research shows is that there is no significant correlation between funding and education. But let me tell you what does impact student achievement. High quality and consistent leadership, highly efficacious teachers, increased parental involvement. Like, I'm gonna try not to get on my soapbox, but y'all saw I hit that grandma language quick. But money helps, but you have to have the right people on the team. There has to be passion. There has to be joy in the classrooms, whether it's virtual or brick and mortar. And so increased parental involvement, meaningful relationships, individualized school, leader, teacher, and student support. Sometimes we focus so much on the students. Sometimes we focus so much on the teachers, but your leaders need support. We're in the district, we're on the rise, but we've had a lot of shifts in leadership. That impacts everything else. So when I came into my building, I was the third principal in 5 years. We just welcomed our new superintendent, but there have been quite a few before her in the last 10. So we have to keep that at the core of all discussion because it does not operate in isolation. And so for me, that would be where I start. I do think when you're analyzing data the right way with the 5 reasons or SWOT analysis, the 5 whys, whatever protocol you want to use, you have to keep that in the midst of every discussion. Like, why would you purchase this platform or program over this one? For example, with us being a comprehensive support and intervention school, everybody wants to try their program out in my building. And so I had to, as the leader or as the instructional leader, because I don't just say leader, instructional leader, I had to have the critical conversation. Hey, we can't do anything else. We are unavailable for one more program. Mm-hmm. And so that was a difficult conversation to have because what I had to do with my supervisor is prove why we couldn't do one more thing. And I'm bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Oh, we can do it. We can do it. Yes, we can do all things, but we want to do all things well. And so for me, that means we had to scale back. So definitely using the data to figure out how to allocate funding, but keeping in mind that it's not money. Money alone is not it.
That's true. That's very true. Very true. Ms. Stone, you're next.
Yes, I was just looking at my stats. I love the data. I'm the data, big data. I love it, love it, love it. So she's right. It's not all about money. And we know that is a factor in higher education as to people dropping out. But again, it is having the right people on the team, having that support, making the kids and the environment safe for them. So I want to share with you just a couple of little facts that I want to reiterate since we're talking about this post-COVID and this current COVID situation. We've got to look at our history, our present, and our future. So when we think about factors outside of funding that impact our students, and this is kind of where I would like for our funding to shift to. I would like to see more social emotional support, more mental health services for our students at all levels. According to the CDC, ADHD impacts 6.1 million. So again, that's reported. That's of those that have reported. So those students now transition into my college classrooms with a higher level of learning, more structure, and less support and knowledge of what's to come. So even if we look at just that one factor, how does that impact a student? And so, yes, we see the numbers where students drop out for out the first year, and we lose at our level. We lose the majority of our students in that first year. And even if you go into Niche or Forbes or World Report, whatever publication you want to look at, a lot of times when parents and students are looking at graduation rates, you wonder what's really included in that number. So we've got behavior, anxiety, depression, all of these things are impacting our kids on record between ages 2 to 17. So now the question becomes, how does that 17-year-old newly minted 18-year-old new freshman in a college or university sustain given all this stuff going on around them? So if we're looking at funding, I'd love to see some funding, especially in the higher education level, not only for those first generation students. Hey, I tell you, MTSU was a free ride for me because of my academics. Absolutely. But what about my mental health? If we could spend more time and resources on that, I would be a lot happier as a professor, not only for ourselves, because we have our own community, but it'll make our students better and more receptive to the things that life has for them.
That's true. It's very true. Very true. Candace?
I've seen firsthand here in Metro Nashville how a grant for pre-K helped to increase our pre-K classrooms to almost 180 classrooms, or a little over 180 classrooms. And what that did across the community was allow parents to bring their children into a Metro site, have their children in a school building where they were going to go through K through 4 possibly, and get to know that building, get to know what school was all about, and get that early learning started. It was like a kickstart to a large population of children all at once. And over the course of 5 years, as an instructional coach, I was part of professional development. I was allowed to gain so much knowledge and help share that knowledge with the other teachers across the district. And we focused on very specific initiatives. We looked at curriculum. We have a curriculum that is across all pre-K classrooms, except for our 2 Montessori schools that we have here as public schools. They use the Montessori curriculum, but everyone else is using another curriculum, a creative curriculum that is all about constructivists. And so children constructing their own knowledge based on what teachers teach them. So we were able to put those initiatives in place. We have a social emotional learning department now in Metro that is focused on early social emotional development, not just with pre-K, but through 3rd grade right now is what they're working with. We have family involvement specialists that we'll be able to add on. So they get the families involved in the school. So I see firsthand how funding can increase quality, and that vision that we all share, that our department head is Phyllis Phillips, and she is phenomenal. She has a vision for pre-K in Nashville that is allowing us to see what can be, what can pre-K look like, what can early learning look like. And because of this grant, this initiative, it was so easy for us to put it into place and allow teachers to be able to learn and grow and be better at what they're doing and have high quality classrooms. I do the assessments for the classroom. I was trained on 3 or 4 different assessments, and I turn those into the state. And every year they get a little bit better. I help teachers make action plans. And I was able to do this because of funding. And when that funding goes away, we see how much less help we get. So our grant ended, and now we have just me basically as the instructional coach for the entire early learning department with some part-time help as well. And that shows that the quality of our program is not going down because we put so much in the front end of it, and we still check in with teachers and help them. But not having the funding, I could see how the department could shrink. I could see how we could lose classrooms. I don't want to see that happen. I want us to grow and continue to offer services to families across the district. So funding is important, at least in the very beginning, and then to continue that funding, we have to get the community involved. We have to let teachers and parents know that this is important. Early learning is important throughout the years. There's research that shows that the gains that children make in pre-K last at least through 3rd grade. And I'd like to look into more research as to why we lose those gains between K and 3rd grade. Where do they go? We had this great head start running into kindergarten, and then it disappears. So we need funding to find those things out. So we just need the community involved in that as well.
I apologize, ladies. I was muted. This was awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing your expertise in every area. And my prayer is that we will take everything that we have learned here and change the nightmare that we have now into a dream for our students going into the future and on into the next century. So ladies, we now are coming to our question and answer section of our program, and we have some questions that we will share with you. And Candace, if you would answer this one for us, what are some ways parents can hold programs accountable for quality childcare?
So parents need to know what quality childcare is. And some of the things I mentioned here, knowing that teachers are intentional about what they're teaching, ask questions about what their social emotional learning programs are. How are they teaching social emotional development in children? Ask these questions, and if someone can't answer them, push them to say, well, what programs have you heard of? Give them some ideas that what you're talking about, so that they'll know that child coming in has a parent who's going to be asking these questions. Because the more questions we ask, the more we'll get to know what is actually coming to our child. What is our child actually getting while they're in this program? And if you're not getting the answers you want, seek out another program, or hold that program accountable for what you need. You know, your children need social emotional learning skills. You know, they need intentionality. What are teachers doing? You know, ask those questions and keep asking them until you get what you want to see your child have take part in every day.
Okay. All right. Our next question is, and this is perfect because again, not only is this necessary for your private programs, it can also go into as we're looking to expand pre-K into the public sector. And where I work, we only have maybe 1 or 2 pre-K classrooms versus coming from another district where there was at least 2 or 3 in the building. So as we're expanding that's definitely some questions that we will need to ask. Our next question will center around, again, transitioning from our nightmare into a dream in education. So the next question could be pulled up, please. And this is for all of our panelists. Can you speak to the importance of partnerships between administrator teams and parents, specifically ideas for making connections and engaging during the pandemic? And we'll just go in the order of the screen. We'll start with Candace, then we'll go with Dawn and end with Dr. Covington.
Okay, so administrators and teams such as the Department of Education, in my case, and principals need to be able to be on the same page with what's necessary for children. Right now, it's all about the kids. We have to come up with ideas that are going to be sustainable for parents too. We need to know that what children need right now is for supportive adults to be around them. And if we can get that message out, I think it would make a big difference as to how the children are able to function in this society as it is right now.
Okay. Dawn, if you could answer that as well.
Absolutely. So I just want to echo what she said, making those connections with the families during the pandemic. Whether you're K through 12 or in higher education, it's real important to understand what the needs are. And so what I have found, and there's some work that we're doing at the church that I'm affiliated with, where we've adopted a school. And we as educators go into that school, and I'm on the parent team. So part of my role is to educate the parent, because a lot of the stuff, whether it be math or English or science, a lot of the stuff we don't know. And so then our question as a team becomes, how can I help you learn? What are the things, if you don't know what you don't know, right? But how can I help you master the role of support, right? Even if it's just getting your kid out of bed and knowing that they need to be on a Zoom call at 9:00 every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, showing them how to organize their spaces. I was a homeschool mom as well, and my daughter now is a freshman in a private university in California. And so people look and they're like, how'd she end up in California? It's called having a plan. So we as parents, I call ourselves parent pals. As parent pals, we have to be there to participate, to advocate, and to learn together. That's what a parent pal is. So that's what my recommendation is.
Okay. And Sharshinda, Dr. Covington, if you would end us out on this question.
No worries. So I was taking notes. Anybody knows me knows I'm always writing. And so the first things that came to mind were alignment, intentionality, and meaningful relationships. So one cannot work without the other. It does not matter how great of a lesson plan my third grade team puts together if the parents don't log into Zoom, right? So for me, we have to all be on the same playing field. But that requires effective communication. And so what I typically do when I have those amazing parents that are challenging everything and every policy we have, once I resolve that issue, I say, now, can I count on you to support me next week at the PTA meeting? Because we don't have to agree on everything, but I think some of your parent friends would like to hear from you. And so I channel that energy. Like I make phone calls to parents, and it's typically, I start with my challenging parents because what I do know is they know how to get in contact with me, right? So I start there and just making sure that we're working together. I can't be any more successful with leading this school if your child is not successful while attending. Because if I'm super honest, parental involvement has been an issue in my building for over the last 10 years. We're getting better. We're still not there. We did a parent university a couple of weeks ago, well, a month or so ago, on a Saturday morning. My team was celebrating that there were 73 of us on a call. 73 is not a lot. especially when there are staff members present, but it was more than what we were used to. It was different for our platform. It was different for what we typically do at our school. And so for us, we just have to be honest about where we are, and you can't grab all of them. So you got to start somewhere. And so what I did, we had maybe 20 or 30 of those 73 being parents. And so what I did a random raffle. And so what I sent them was a swag bag. They have a mask, they have a book bag, and a t-shirt. And so this was not supposed to be right here, but since it is, I'm going to share it with you. My daughter and I put them together. So we have a mask, and we rebranded our school because our school has been open since 1925. So the original pirate, he's Granddaddy Pirate. And my children are here now, and so they didn't go together well. And so SMES strong no matter the distance. And on the back, one of our sayings is moving the mountain. So I put, we're still moving the mountain. And then a little cute little book bag. Now, of course, this has nothing to do with literacy or numeracy, but it has everything to do with school culture, because those parents, once they received that book bag, they were email, I got my package today. I didn't believe you were going to send it. And I'm like, why wouldn't I? You know, like, my word is all I have, because you can't come to the building and tell me I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So my word, whether it be Google Voice or email, is all I have left. So just thinking outside of the box, making those parents that want to interact, that want to engage, feel present, wanted, and needed, starting with them.
Okay. Ladies, again, thank you all so very much. It seems that we have come to the end of our webinar and of our program. Thank you all so very much for speaking in and sharing your expertise and how we can turn this from a nightmare to a dream for students, for parents, for community leaders, for principals, and I'm excited about going into work tomorrow with all this new knowledge that I want to share with my students as we're turning this around. So Jody, Tag, you're it. Jody, Tag, you're it. Uh-oh, she's frozen. Uh-oh. Okay. We're having just a little bit of, and again, thank you again for coming on, and we'll go ahead and get our certificates out for our panelists. So this is for Dr. Sharshenda Covington. For Dr. Sharshenda Covington, again, thank you for agreeing to speak to us and sharing your expertise as a turnaround principal, and continue and striving in all that you're able to do. Our next certificate is for Ms. Candace Jennings. I'm sorry, for Ms. Dawn Stone. Thank you again for speaking to us on the higher ed platform. And our final certificate is for Ms. Candace Jennings, coming in as our pre-K advocate and pre-K speaker. Again, thank you for sharing this with us and for talking with us about the importance of pre-K and early school. Thank you all so much for joining, for participating with us. And Jody, Tag, you're it. Okay. We'll go ahead and talk about some of our upcoming events with DTech Tag Tennessee. We have a webinar and teacher symposium that will occur in March 2021. So just be on the lookout for dates for that particular symposium. We also have some other areas in DTech, 6 other areas that are working and doing the work. If you would like to contact us, you can contact us at TNT-Tennessee Tag-DTech on Facebook, or email us at tennesseetag@gmail.com. Again, thank you everyone for coming in and sitting in on our webinar on this morning or on this afternoon. Again, as I said, we have 6 other DTech initiatives that are practicing and pushing advocacy throughout the United States. We have a DTech team in Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, Texas, and of course here in the great state of Tennessee and the DMV. So again, look into any of those areas if you have any questions on educational advocacy throughout your particular area, throughout this great country. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful, wonderful day. And there's a video that will come up that will show some of the programs that these other DTEC change agents have put together. Thank you again.
We gotta fight against them, but we need numbers. We need to show up at school board meetings. We need to show up at county commissioner meetings. We need to have someone on the agenda to talk and know what they're talking about to advocate.